What's going on, guys? This is Remember with Level 1, and I'm here to discuss something that's probably near and dear to my heart. It is actually my entire home theater setup. So I'd like to just go and start by saying this is actually, the best case scenario, your next gen setup, everything that you should be having, you should be using, and basically tear down everything that's kind of going on in my entire apartment space. And there are kind of notable honorable mentions. Those will probably even happen in the end, or I'll make an entire video that will basically showcase everything that's going on here, and it's just my setup versus like what you should be doing for your whole next gen setup. Obviously with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S already out here in the airwaves. Pretty hard to find, but you could still try to manage to get one before Christmas. Then this is some of the stuff that you might need. So let's list off what I have and then sort of where I'm talking about to put in your everyday living room situation or space. Now we're talking projector screen. We are talking projectors. We are talking home theater setup. We are talking lighting. We are talking seating. And then we are obviously talking next gen consoles. So these are all sort of the basis of what I'll be talking about and sort of breaking down what I have. And probably, if you look in the description below, I'll have everything that's listed, sort of how I have it, and then possibly even sort of deals and stuff like that to kind of get you started. So without further ado, all right, starting from the top, from my setup. Projector screen. Now I have a Elite screen, so an Elite ALR 120-inch projector screen fixed on the wall. So this isn't a pull down or anything, and obviously you can do that. You can sort of get that from Elite. Elite is probably one of the higher end brands when it comes to making screens, not in the crazy Magnolia space where I'm paying thousands of dollars for a fixed screen, but they make very, very good screens. I would highly recommend getting one of their screens, whether ALR, whether it's anything else. And just to let people know, ALR is ambient light rejection. So while I have the curtains kind of open and stuff like that, I'll still get a decent amount of light coming onto the screen that I would be able to take advantage of. That being the difference between having a screen that would need total darkness. And obviously with it being darker and darker and things, and you having sort of a more blackout space, the actual screen will be able to retain that much more light. So that's something to keep in mind when you want to get into the sort of the more richer and more featureful colors when you're playing around with the stuff. Next thing is projectors. Now I actually started off with different kinds of Epsons, Optoma projectors in the past. An Optoma 4K projector, I think it's their 60 UHD, if I'm not mistaken, that you can use as like a basis 4K or a standard 4K projector. A couple $1,000s. I think it's like anywhere between $1,600 and $1,800. Don't quote me on that. I feel like I haven't done the Optoma stuff in a while, but the ones that I primarily use, the one that you could start off with is a Epson 4000. If you want, I can basically really go break down how I'm using my setup, which is basically I'm using a Epson 5050 projector. That is the first projector with HDMI 2.1 in the socket. That was a big deal for anyone using an Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox One S, where you couldn't get that conversion for 4K HDR and 60 frames per second in gaming. It had to be 4K 30 frames or somewhere in between that. With that being said, you could not get 4K 60 frames a second gaming, which became an issue. It dumbed everything down back to 1080p. Things would sort of do its sort of 4K e-shifting kind of, but you wouldn't get the richest of the rich of colors. Now, I'm going to explain this in another video, and if you want me to, then I can go into more detail. But the way I was able to bypass that, which is with an HD Fury linker. So with a certain macro, it was able to bypass the 8-bit processing happening to try to get 4K and turn it into 10-bit on its output and gave me 4K 60 frames a second without dropping down to 1080. I can also do that in the description below, or even make a whole separate video of the entire setup, and that's how I have it set it up. And that's, for that stuff, you can use an Epson 4000, you can use an Epson 5040 UB, because that's all projectors that I've used in the past to sort of go about that sort of action. And actually one of these projectors is an actual Epson 4000. The other one is the Epson 5050. So you are getting true 4K with HDR and 60 frames a second, being that the HDMI is 2.1. So that'll just work out the box using your Xbox Series X, your Xbox One, any of the consoles, PS5 and stuff like that. That'll get you the most future ready. And then obviously you don't need to do any sort of real processing with that. Now, the big thing with that is that it's a bit pricey. So I forget what the actual pricing for it is now. I don't remember if it's anywhere between $2,500 to almost to $3,000, but that one's a little bit more of a pricier end. Obviously the stuff with the HD Fury will get you in a more cheaper end basis, with giving you really good lumens on these projectors, since that's what I'm kind of using them for, besides the fact that they give out great color and stuff, their whole 3-color wheel. Now let's talk home theater. Now I have a Denon X4300H. So that's a pretty good receiver, actually a couple years old at this point, but it's 9.1 with Atmos. And it's actually one of the only receivers to not only be able to do Dolby Atmos and DTS:X, and that was with an update, but it was also able to do Aurora 3D. And Aurora 3D is, it's kind of dead, but it actually has its own algorithm of how it creates an entire room of 3D sound. And it's definitely something to take a look at if you are, sort of in the market to play around with, different sorts of height surround versus, your premium level surround or whatever. So it being a 9.1, I have speakers all over for it. I take advantage of 7 speakers around, and then or I should say 9 speakers around, and then 2 subwoofers. So the set of speakers actually come from different places. It depends on your kind of setup, the way you want to do it, but we have some SVS speakers, we have some clip speakers, and we have some infinity speakers. And with the setup, I have it kind of set up in the way that, I'm able to take advantage. Some being the gallery clip speakers, which are pretty much flush to the wall. Those are my left and rights for surround. And then some of the height speakers being clips, like actual Atmos speakers, and then SVS actual Atmos speakers. So that's sort of the way I take advantage of. It's 4 height speakers, 7 speakers across, and then 2 subs. So that's basically the way I have things set up. I have vaulted high ceilings. So, I was able to do 2 front height speakers at the level of like the highest point of the projector, kind of aiming at the focal view of where the seating is. And that works best with me, which also has 2 speakers on the left and right height. And that's how I have that set up here. Definitely play around with your setup on, how you want to maximize it. Don't put speakers too close together. Just so that you can get a very spaced surround sound. I'd say that the Xbox One, and then obviously the Xbox One and the Xbox One X and stuff like that, was the only real good solution that you can have good height speakers for. Some games took advantage of Dolby Atmos, and then obviously it was the only console with a 4K Blu-ray player in it. So for any other speakers that have Dolby Atmos or DTS:X, that's when you would want to play around with. But now that both next gen consoles, you're gonna have a lot more games kind of trying to take advantage of that kind of thing. Now let's talk lighting. So lighting is a big one for me, and not something that's very standardized across everybody. What I was able to do was take advantage of Philips Hue's HueSync sort of box. Now that's the box that you can basically put HDMI into it. It'll try to sync the media to, what's on screen to whatever light preferences you have, and sort of output colors based on that. Now this can happen in a variety of ways, and a lot of people use it for monitors and, different aspects on that. And that's sort of like the easiest way of doing it. You can actually take advantage of doing that without having this sort of box. This box lets you take care of it with a entertainment unit. So a bigger TV, that kind of thing. That's sort of where it takes advantage of. I took it another step. I did it with a whole projector screen unit. Now one would say, why didn't I just use an entire thing of light strips around to make the whole thing work? I have done that before, not with this sort of setup, but I did create an entire area where it was just LED lights coming off the projector screen, and it didn't hold too well. So after a couple of months, the adhesive from the bottom specifically started to come off. I didn't like the way it looked. So that's sort of stuff that I removed, and I came up with my own idea. So these I'm taking advantage of Philips Hue play bars, Philips Hue's lights with brackets that will turn on the lights, and they have their own little like studio sort of setup with the left and right, as you can see. And I kind of set these up everywhere. As of right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 lights set up for the living room to take advantage of. So really it's the left and the right angled in a certain way that pulls out the light, you know, in that direction of the projector screen, left and right of it, to give it sort of like a decent amount of color without kind of washing out what's on screen or just putting too much light into the actual space. So that was able to work for me. And then everything else around it is ambiance. I have one set, you know, 2 set next to the actual seating area so that you can kind of see little color hues coming off of there. All right, so I've gone on about the Philips Hue sink and how that ends up working with, you know, all the units to basically give you what's on screen and light up the room in different ways, giving it a different kind of ambiance when you're watching stuff. Not only that, but you should be very specific on how you actually do that. Now, to the taping of this video, there are, I think, 2 Philips Hue sink boxes. The first one is only capable of doing HDR10 and 4K, with it leaving out, you know, some crucial stuff like being able to do Dolby Atmos and stuff. So in our setup, what you want to make sure is that you put the Philips Hue sync HDMI box as the last thing before it hits your receiver, before it hits your projector or your TV and stuff. What that'll allow you to do is obviously put all your inputs going into the receiver. You'll get Dolby Atmos and stuff, and then as you put in stuff through the Philips Hue sync HDMI lit like box, then you'll be able to get still HDR10 with 4K and stuff like that into your projector or your TV set. So that's sort of how we lined it up. There are a little bit notable issues, and it might just be on my end being with my receiver, but having all that stuff connected, sometimes the actual picture kind of drops out every once in a while, and it'll kind of just like try to read itself again and then show up. It happens rarely, but it does happen, so that's just something to be aware of, where there's maybe too many input connections, or maybe there's some of my settings. The other HDMI sync box for Philips Hue actually does do Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, to my knowledge, so maybe that's something that you want to kind of upgrade to, or something you might be aware of, and look into doing that. And then I guess obviously you can put that box in any sort of order position that you want, or the way they recommend. So there's that. All right, another big one for me was seating. Now, while you can have a couch kind of placed and, you know, at an equal distance, I'd say if you have anything between 100-inch screen and higher, you're gonna want to get between 12 to 15 feet in the least, you know, with you being able to get a little bit further back if you have that kind of room. I only have about 15 feet from the wall or so to work with, so 120 inches was good. And with that, I actually wanted to do some sort of stadium seating, so I got a box platform built with another couch that kind of sits on it, and this couch is aligned in the front of that, which is the one I'm sitting on. To me, in regular day use, I can sit on this couch, which is about 10 to 12 feet, and be perfectly fine watching the content on screen. But 15 feet is sort of your ideal, so when I'm gonna really watch a movie or play like an extensive amount of games, I kind of go back there and I kind of do my thing. People don't have that much space to work with when it comes to this kind of stuff, but you do want to be aware of the amount of space you give yourself. You don't want to be too far, and then you obviously don't want to be too close. Doing stuff like this, it's like literally like a solid plank wood of box that was put together so that people can sit there, and I've sat like 3, maybe even 4 people back there comfortably. So if there's any way that you can sort of carpenter that box, I get that done. Unfortunately, there's no real link for me to put that, since I went to like a local guy and I helped kind of just put that stuff together. But there shouldn't be that many difficulties finding some sort of local carpenter around you to kind of do that kind of thing. And then last but not least, your next gen consoles, or consoles in general, really. We do have a PS5 and an Xbox Series X in, so it was easy to sort of hook up, kind of see where our settings were, and then kind of go from there. Now with the Epson 5050, we were able to get like true 4K off of that, and it's their 4K E-Shift, but you're really not noticing any sort of difference between that and kind of native 4K, since it's bumping up the resolution by pulling pixels together and doubling the image so that you get that. Now, the PS5, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and even the remastered edition look absolutely phenomenal on this. You know, there's things taking advantage of, like with Dolby Atmos, and then the 4K, HDR, it all look really good. The colors on screen, and then obviously with the lighting and stuff, look really, really nice. So that's just, these are all the things that I sort of felt like I want to take advantage of. And then obviously the ALR screen, capturing as much light as possible when colors are coming through and stuff like that. And then obviously making the picture really, really rich. And so it is something that's really, really cool to see. And then obviously with the Xbox Series X and those sets of games, playing Gears of War 5, or some of the other third-party games like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it looked really, really good playing this stuff. And then obviously, you know, if you're just doing even the movie setup, movies look really great for this. So, you know, I was playing everything like The Emancipation of Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, and the colors kind of bloomed and was bright, and like the sides with the color ambiances happening was super cool to see. And this is all without, you know, having to use long, extensive strips of LEDs to go around it. You'll get your most accurate color, but depending on the screen size, you obviously can't pull something like that together unless you're just dropping wads of cash, and you can do that too. We'll probably have the description so that we show you how to do that too, but I feel like this was the most effective way to do this, so I got that done. I didn't want to put this disclaimer nearly in the beginning. If it's at the end, it's fine, but basically, you know, my presentation was so that it was effective and it looked nice as I'm watching stuff, but things are kind of messy, as you can see. So, you know, I don't have things, hidden wires and stuff. It's not like a perfect setup. This is meant for the person that lives in an apartment. It can be in your home, and then obviously you have more wiggle room to kind of hide things out. But, you know, in an apartment space, especially in urban areas, you live in Chicago, you live in California, you live in New York like we do, you know, I'm not cutting up the entire sets of walls to do so. So this worked for me, and I've had zero complaints when I've showed people started the setup. Now, there were some honorable mentions I was going to mention, since I do have screens on the side that do their own kind of thing, and then these seats actually have their own kind of like rumbling effect. But I'll get onto that in another video. If you are interested, definitely leave a comment and let me know that you want to see that, and I'll give you an overview, a quick overview of the entire setup, and then every single nook and cranny that I have going on to sort of make this as really good as possible. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and it helps you get to the next level of your like next generation console setup or even home theater setup. There's a lot that I've done here over the years, but I hopefully made it easier for you to kind of get there in your own living room space. The only thing that I probably didn't mention before is that I technically have like blackout curtains, and then even a set of black mesh paper that it was like bought accordion fold, and I was able to hide through the windows and the curtains that sort of dark out setting, so that, you know, this room is dark enough that midday to night it looks great and it's almost nearly pitch black, and so, you know, I could show things on screen and it looks great. And that was actually over the years of having a different kind of screen with the ALR Elite screen. It actually captures a lot more light than I need, so, you know, some of that stuff is not even fully needed, but it definitely helps either way. So let me know if you're interested, and I can sort of put a link for that below too. But this is LVLONE News. Definitely leave a like, comment below, let us know what you think. This took a lot of work, so hopefully it gives everybody exactly what they need for their entire setup. If you're having any troubles or issues, let us know. We'll try to answer as quickly as possible. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube, push notify so that you don't miss on all the new content, and it lets us know that you want some of that new content out faster, sooner than later. And we'll check you guys later. Take care, guys.